So let's have a look at all the ways we can launch our EC2 instances. And the first one is using a spot request. On the left-hand side, I click on spot request, and we can have a look at first the pricing history for our EC2 instances. So if we look, for example, at a C3 or a C4 large, for example, you're running Linux Unix, and I'm going to look at 3 months range, we can see how the price has evolved over time based on April, May, June, and we have the on-demand price as a black bar right here. And then we have, based on the different AZ, the price. And as we can see, well, the price has been quite low and quite stable. And based on the different range you're looking at savings of around 69 to 70% for this type of instance. So huge savings if you're using a spot instance of type C4 large. So how do we request a spot instance? Well, we click on request spot instances. So I am in my spot fleet request screen, and there's a lot of parameters that you can see, but I want to go quickly over them just so you get an idea of how spot fleet request works. So you can either use a launch template or manually configure launch parameters, and you can specify Amazon EC2, the key pair you want to use, as well as some additional launch parameters you would specify if you were to create an EC2 instance. So this defines how your EC2 instances are created, and this makes sense. Next, we have request details. So we have more settings in here. We can say what's the max price we want to have, when is the request valid from and valid until, do we want to terminate the instances when the request expires or not, and are we linking these EC2 instances to one or more classic load balancer or a target group to have it, for example, for an application load balancer. So we'll use the defaults for this. Then for target capacity, how many instances do we want to have as part of our spot fleets? So we can say, for example, 10 instances, okay? But you could also specify it in terms of vCPUs if your unit of compute was more important, or megabytes of memory if RAM was more of your target. So we can say, for example, we want 10 vCPUs, we want to maintain the target capacity, and then what happens? Well, in case of interruption, please terminate my instances, but you can also stop them or hibernate them. Okay, and you can also rebalance the capacity if need be. So this is just some tweaking around the target capacity. Then for networking settings, so where do you want to launch them in specific AZs or not, in a specific VPC or not. Then for the instance type, do we want to have some restrictions? So you can manually select the EC2 instances that are matching some specific criteria for your compute for your spot fleet request, for example, C3 large, C4 large, and so on. Or you could specify just instances attributes, and this can say, hey, how many vCPUs you want min and max, how much memory you want min and max, and then other attributes if you wanted to. And then based on what you specify right here is going to give you the matching instance types. And basically, the more restrictive you are around these parameters, the less instance type matches you're going to have. But the idea is that you want to just launch whatever AWS has in store for you so that you maximize the savings while having some compliance with the restrictions you said before. Then the allocation strategy. So do you want to optimize for capacity, so to make sure that you have the right capacity all the time? Or do you want to have the lowest price and you're going to get the strongest savings based to that? And then if you had chosen the manually selected instance types here, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, then you could select this option right here to maintain a diverse pool of instances across all the instance types you selected right here. So once you've done it, you get some summary of your fleet request and whether it's a strong fleet, how many instances match, and so on, and which AZ. And then it gives you the estimated hourly price for this fleet. So 0.156 per hour at target capacity, which is going to give me a 73% savings compared to on demand. So no need to know exactly how these work, okay, but just so you can see all the parameters you can have to do a spot fleet request. If you want to launch a spot instance directly, just go to instances and then launch an instance. And in there, you can scroll down and you will find under the advanced details, the option to request a spot instance. So if you do so, then you are requesting spot instances. And by default, the request of the spot price is capped at the on-demand price, which is quite good, but you can customize this. So you can, for example, enter your own maximum price if you wanted to per instance per hour. Then you can choose the type of request you want. So by default, it is a one-time request. That means that whenever you request a spot instance, in case it gets reclaimed, it will automatically be terminated. This is the only correct interruption behavior, or you can choose a persistent type of request. In that case, then the spot instance will keep on coming back when the price requirements are set. In that case, you have to set a validity of your request. You say, okay, this request is persistent until a date or just no expiry, as well as what happens in case the price goes over the maximum price you have. In that case, you have an interruption behavior of either hibernate or stop. And finally, you see here block duration. This is going away on December 22nd, on December 31st of 2022. So I'm not describing it to you right now. This is a outdated feature that you may not even see on your account right now. Next, let's have a look at all the other options available to us. So we have reserved instances, and reserved instances allows us to purchase a specific reserve instance of a specific type. For example, we can look for a C5 large, and we can do a search of all the offerings. And as we can see, we have different offerings available to us. For example, we have a 12 months or a 13 months term, and it could be a standard or a convertible type of instance. And this is all upfront, but we scroll down, we can get so all upfront, we can get no upfront, we can get partial upfront. We say how many we want. For example, we want two of these, so I'll just have the number 2 in here. And then on the right hand side, you can just click on add to cart to add this reserve instance to your cart. If you click on view carts, you can have a look at what type of reserve instance do you want, and then we can order all. But if you click on that, you will pay a lot of money, so I would suggest not to do this. As we can see, reserve instances, I think, will soon go away because now the ARES savings plans may be something that's easier to use. And so this is why it's recommended to use the savings plan. So the savings plans is available here on the left-hand side, which is allow you to dedicate a specific amount of dollar per hour you spend on a 1 to 3 year term, and gives you flexibility of how you want to launch your instance. It gives you flexibility in terms of instance type, AZs, and so on. So we'll not go over it, but it gives you the option. Next, we have dedicated hosts. So dedicated host is for you to launch a host that you get access to a lower level kind of hardware, which gives you better licensing pricing, which is why if you click on this, it will direct you to a license manager, which is a way to think in terms of licenses and not think in terms of hosts. And in which case, it's going to simplify the management of your dedicated host. But if you wanted to launch a dedicated host directly from this UI, you click on allocate dedicated host, then you would name it, you would specify the instance family, for example, C5, you would specify an AZ. So on this dedicated host of type C5, we can launch multiple instance types and then a bunch of settings as you go. And then you click on allocate and you would have a dedicated host. But again, I will not do this because this will cost you a lot of money. Finally, for capacity reservations, this is when you want to ensure that capacity is available within your EC2 instance launch. So, for example, we're saying, hey, I want to make sure that I have enough M5 2x large available to me. So I want them to be in EU Central 1, and I want them to have four EC2 EC2 instances of type M5 2x large available to me no matter what. Okay. And then you can say when the reservation ends, is it manually on a specific time? And then this will guarantee that the instances will be available to you, but you will have to pay for this reservation regardless whether or not you are launching your instances in it, okay? So that's it for this lecture. We've seen all the ways to launch your EC2 instance types. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture.